welcome. This is episode 1 of the Bay Area Mompreneur, and I am Olivia McNally, owner and founder of McNally & Associates, your Bay Area residential real estate team. And I am here today with Robert Imazumi from Guaranteed Rate. Robert, how are you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing great, thanks. We've known each other for quite a while now, which is so crazy to think about, right? Like we started here 8 years ago when I started in real estate, and you were kind of just starting off as well on the lending part. And we were up in San Francisco and shared this little teeny tiny desk working, I don't know, what were we pulling? Like 12, 18 hours a day. Like it was insane. It
felt like more, like at least 25 hours a day, at least.
First people in and last people to leave out of that office, right?
Absolutely.
And, you know, we just built this kind of rapport and friendship and realized that we do business a lot alike. We're very similar in the way that we do our business, right? So I am just all about helping people and educating. And that's really what this podcast is all about, is helping educate as much as possible here, because there's so much going on in real estate and lending right now. So helping anybody out there that has the same questions as we do, right? Like we're constantly wondering. So, Robert, we want to hear a little bit about you and a little bit about what you're doing with Guaranteed Rate. And then we're going to talk about some fantastic questions and get some education going for people.
Awesome. Thank you. Yeah. So my name is Robert Imazumi. I work for Guaranteed Rate. Guaranteed Rate's a great company. I mean, we've done like $116 billion in loans last year. Having the flexibility to lend in all 50 states is a true blessing. And just having a team that really is motivated to try to get the loans closed on time and at a rate that's going to be suitable for our clients. You know, I love the industry that we're in just because, again, I get to educate and help clients every day fulfill the American dream of being a homeowner. And since my mom was a teacher for 30 plus years, giving that education back is something that I really love to do, because it gives people weapons to go to war when you're looking to buy a house in the Bay Area.
Yeah, absolutely. And Robert, why did you start in lending? Tell us your backstory.
Oh man, seems like forever ago. But I bought my first house when I was about 24, and it was back in like perfect timing, relatively. It was like 2010, and it was really crazy because my lender was the absolutely worst. My real estate agent was like some guy that was like, did it as a side job, you know, so it wasn't like, their heart wasn't there, and had to go and follow up, chase documentation down, give it to him again, call like a crazy ex-boyfriend. And the process was just stressful. It's like, wait, we already provided that to you. Why do we need this again? Oh, I lost it, or whatever it may be. And I talked to some other people after we finally closed, and they said, you know, that's how all lenders are. Real estate agents, same thing. They're just used car salesmen. And to me, that was like, that really? They're making such a big commission, right? So this is their job. This is their livelihood. Why would you treat your business like that? And to me, that was my calling, because I love numbers. I love talking to people. I love trying to figure out how I could save money and try to really plan and set a goal for these people in this future and set the path to get there. So it was a calling to me, and I really tried ever since I got into the industry to do the best work that I can and have open line of communication with my clients, with real estate agents, like all parties, because at the end of the day, that's really what matters.
Yeah, absolutely. It's shocking to me now, being in this industry for 8 years and, you know, over 300 million in sales, how many really not so great realtors there are. And now I really have a true understanding as to why realtors as a whole get such a bad rap, right? Same with lenders, but
yeah.
When you do things different, you stand out. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things I've seen about you and your business over the years, Robert, is, you know, the way that you treat clients. You know, even if I refer you a client and you're not able to help them, you're the first person to be honest, like, hey, I think you're going to get a better rate or a better deal over here. Let's lead you over here, right? Knowing that you're helping them achieve that ultimate home buying goal, right? And that's really a wonderful thing. So Robert, we have some real magical questions for you here. And, with the shifting of what's happening, we're August 1st, 2022. There's a lot going on in the market these days. And one of the biggest questions right now is home buyers are watching interest rates and they're asking, is this a good time to buy? If I was only looking at, say, 3.25%, a few months ago, and now I'm looking at mid 4s or 5s or sometimes even 6s, depending on the client's portfolio, what is the price difference we're looking at now compared to then? And how does that look over a 30-year time frame? So, Robert, talk to us. If I'm your sister, if I'm your mom, and I'm like, Robert, I have some cash. I want to buy a house, but I feel like I've missed the boat, right? Like interest rates are high now. What's your advice?
It's funny I get this question a lot actually, but because rates are higher in comparison to what they were let's say 6 months ago when they're at a low, but they're still not really high. It's all relative. Like when our parents were buying houses, their interest rates were in double digit. You're looking at a credit card payment kind of interest rates for mortgages back then. So when we really look at things, they're not really high. It was just they came up from such a low spot that they feel high. And I get that. That everyone wants a deal. Everybody wants to get everything for the cheapest price and have the lowest payment. But I mean, that's just the way the market is right now. Things have kind of evening out and corrected themselves from interest rates that were all-time lows. So for a good scenario, if someone was buying $1.5 million house with 20% down 6-7 months ago when the interest rates were lower, then compared to now or mid-June when they were the highest, interest rates were mid-5s. So for some buyers. So when we look at the payment difference in just 7 months, I mean, that's almost $1,600 a month for the same $1.5 million property. Right? So the purchasing power ends up being less, which does hurt some people that were sitting on the sideline. Hey, let's let the market crash. Let's let the market crash. Let's have prices go down because they're hearing that on the news, right? So, I mean, their purchasing power probably dropped $250,000 over this last 7 months just because the interest rate went up. And that's just based off of the overall payments of the swing in interest rates from then. But again, interest rates are really low, so interest rates are relatively low, compared to what our parents are saying. Over the lifespan of 30 years, though, that interest rate, it definitely does hurt, because you could be buying that 1.5 with 20% down 6 months ago compared to now, and the amount of interest that you'd be paying the lender is going to be close to $250,000 plus. So you're going to be paying a little bit extra. But at the same time, maybe your house appreciated that much more since then, and you haven't been paying rent or anything like that for the last 6-7 months. And you can't really time the market. If everyone could time the market perfectly, everyone would be rich, right? We would have went back in the day and bought some Amazon and some Google, but and then paid cash for a house potentially, right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely. I mean, I think it's all relative, right? When my dad bought his first house, it was off of a handshake on a boat in the middle of the San Mateo Lagoon. He was out water skiing with an owner of a really well-known water ski company. And, he was like, hey, I really want to buy a house on the lagoon and, teach my daughter and my wife to water ski. And I just can't get in. And the guy was like, hey, I'm moving. Let's do this. And my dad's like, I don't have any money. He's like, it's okay. He's like, we'll do a side deal, right? We'll do it off of a handshake. We'll make it happen. And at that point, this is, back in the early 90s, interest rates were 13%. That house was $325,000 and just sold 2 years ago. Third sale since 2009, and just sold close to $3 million. Right. So, it's all relative. And in the Bay Area, when we look historically at interest rates, everybody wants to compare to what it was 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago. But historically, the rates are still really low. right? So I think that's excellent advice. If we're looking to get into homes, this is the time to do it and stop sitting on the sidelines, because I'm watching buyers have the exact same experience you're just talking about, which is if they have a limited amount of money and they were pre-approved for X, they are now losing purchase power. And what they're seeing is, yes, some opportunities are presenting themselves with price reductions, but overall, they wish they had locked something in, 4 or 5 months ago. So it will be interesting to see what happens here over the next few months. Let's talk about the home buyers who are, saying, hey, I'm a home buyer that bought this house $900,000 6 months ago, and now I'm watching other properties in the neighborhood sell for, say, $875,000, and I feel like I overpaid. And I've had this happen, Robert. So for someone who said 900 with a small interest rate versus somebody who pays 875 with a higher interest rate, did they overpay? Right? Like, let's hear it from the investment side of the real estate, which is the lending side, because I know what my answer is, but I want them to hear it from the numbers guy.
All right, I am the numbers guy. I love numbers. I'm definitely a geek when it comes to these numbers because it makes me all giddy. So tell me to slow down, and if you need me to not get so excited here. It's funny you asked this question because I got into this exact situation with the first time I bought my house. I bought my house, and then 2 months later, the house, like right across the street, completely comp, sold for less. I was like, what? We're underwater already? Like, how is this possible? Real estate's supposed to be the best, best investment. That's what the internet says and these books, right? But I mean, it's all relative, right? Hindsight's 20/20. There's no way you could time something perfectly, and in order to know that you got the best possible deal, right? Bring it back to the Google and the Amazon investments. But I mean, if we're looking at the sheer numbers of it overall, based off where rates were 7 months ago, compared 6-7 months ago compared to now, you're probably going to be paying like $800 more a month in for a mortgage of that same amount, right? So over 30 years, you're paying $300,000 more for the house. So what do you say, $25,000 difference it was? Yeah, like $25,000 difference. I mean, that's a drop in the bucket. I mean, you're not buying a property to pay the transactional costs of that just to sell it to get a gain real quick. Yeah. And for me, at least, real estate's long-term investment. I want to hold the properties until I'm either retiring or die and pass them on to my kids. Because if you look at, like you said, your dad's house, if he would have kept that house, he went from a $300,000 house to $3 million house in 20 years. I look at my grandma's house that she bought like World War II era, and I was like, oh my, it's like $5 million. It was like 5,000x or something insane. I was like, oh my god. And I remember when she sold it, I was like, oh, it's a beautiful house. It had an orchard in the back and everything in the Oakland Hills. And I look at it now, I'm like, wow, like I cannot believe this house is worth this much money. We were blessed to have that growing up and playing there.
Yeah.
So,
no, absolutely.
Long term.
Yeah, I agree. And I always tell clients, when you're getting into this to build a foundation or a stepping stone for real estate, if you're buying a single family home, it depends on the home you're buying as to what your ROI and how much equity you're going to build, right? But in that amount of time. But when you're buying a condo, or if you're buying a different type of property than a single family home, my rule of thumb is kind of minimum is 5 to 7 years. Sometimes you'll get lucky in a market, be able to sell it before and be able to get out or make a little money. But for the most part, a condo, you should hold 5 to 7 years minimum. Do you agree with that, Robert?
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And, when I talk to my clients, I always ask them that, like, what is your game plan here? Are you going to hold this property forever? Are you going to make it into an investment property eventually down the road? Or, maybe you're going to get married soon, or you're expecting a kid, and a condo is not going to be it for you. So that also helps me to figure out whether or not like a 30-year fix is going to be good for them, or maybe a adjustable rate mortgage. Because if you're only going to keep the property for 5 to 7 years, and you're not going to utilize the 30-year fix to the full extent. So you might as well leverage that, have a better interest rate, and then save that money for other investments that might have a higher return on investment than what we see as high interest rates right now.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I remember when I bought my first house with you, Robert, and, I was convinced that this was a stepping stone property, and you were like, okay, let's go this route. Let's do a 7-in-1 arm. You're going to get a great rate right now. And then just within a couple of years, saw the writing on the wall that this was a perfect first investment portfolio home for our kids. So, as soon as I could grab the opportunity of being able to refi and get into a 30-year fix, I did. And everybody, I think when they think of an ARM, they just think scary 2008, right? And what we're seeing right now is really not 2008 at all. What do you think the biggest difference between 2008 and today of what we're seeing with the higher interest rates and what's going on is?
Yeah, absolutely. So today is not 2008. So when people talk about market crash, I think they're really thinking about a market correction, but the market's cyclical. What happened in 2008 was more because there were lender guidelines or lack thereof that allowed lenders to use someone's word of, I make $200,000 serving at McDonald's, and they could buy $1 million house. Whereas now, the amount of documentation we need, it's almost like the blood, sweat, and tears of your firstborn child. W-2s, tax returns, paychecks, IDs, like everything. We need to see everything. We need to source where all the money came from. We need to make sure that you're not buying from a cousin or anything like that. So the guidelines are so strict now that only the most qualified people are able to qualify, whereas before pretty much anybody off the street was able to qualify, or there's a way around it to make them qualify, which is why the whole market crashed, in my opinion.
And it's just so crazy to think about that really wasn't so long ago, and that there was actually guidelines like that people were actually qualifying without proving that they were able to financially make these mortgages. Because I've been through the lending process a few times now, and I'm shocked. I mean, the amount of paperwork that's due up until the last second of recording that property is wild, and it's intense, right? And so it's really shocking to me that was even the case. But now the guidelines are so strict, and there's really not too much room for error at this point, right? So I'm seeing the exact same thing as to why it is a different feel, and which brings me back to why we got into that conversation, which is the 7-in-1. It might be really good for some people, right? And it's not like the entire economy is just tanking at this moment, and the 7-in-1 might be good, because if it is an investment, or if you decide to do something else within those 7 years, you can absolutely go back, have a conversation with your lender, and talk about, hey, what's my exit strategy, right? We're year 5, we have 2 years left on this ARM product. What's the right exit strategy depending on what I'm using this property for? Yeah, absolutely.
Another difference between back then and now with the just right mortgages was before they'd have balloon payments. So after, let's say, 7 years, now you're going to have a payment that's triple, quadruple whatever you're used to paying. So that's gone away for the most part. So you don't have to worry about that anymore. Your payment will go up a little bit, but not to the extent that it used to. Yeah,
no, that's a really good point of view as well as to what was happening. So Robert, talk to us about some of the patterns you're seeing as a lender right now today in 2022. Obviously, things have changed like we keep talking about, but what are the patterns you're seeing as a lender right now?
I think the biggest pattern I'm seeing as lenders, people are sidelining themselves just because they're hearing about the economy, inflation, the prime rate going up. What a common misperception is that the Fed controls the actual mortgage rates, but that's not the case. The Fed does control the prime rate, which has a direct relationship to most HELOCs, home equity line of credit, but not for first mortgages. It's driven by inflation mainly, and that's driven by the market itself. So it's a free market. It's not like one power controls, I want to make it more expensive for people to buy houses. It's just how the dice are rolled, essentially. So I see a lot of people kind of putting themselves on the sideline because they're scared. But again, it's you. If the same people were fearful like 5 years ago, the amount of money that they've lost from appreciation and paying rent and all these other costs that sunk costs that you're not going to get back, I mean, they would be in a much better situation. I tell a lot of clients, like, the best time to buy was yesterday.
Yeah.
Right? In this case, yeah, of course, because interest rates have gone up. But I just mean that because now you have the home. You know, you're getting a mortgage deduction from your mortgage interest, and you don't have to worry about the dog fight with buying in markets that are highly competitive.
Yeah, no, excellent advice for sure. And in regards to sellers, any advice you would give sellers? We talk so much about buyers, right? But what advice would you be giving sellers right now in this market?
That's a hard one. But, I think what we're doing a lot is if the sellers are able to give they could bump up the purchase price of their house, like say, hey, I will, instead of taking 1.5, I'll take 1.515 and then give them a $15,000 credit back. That $15,000 credit from the seller side to the buyer side, that could allow the buyer to buy down the interest rate, which then allows them to have a lower payment, which makes them more comfortable going up higher. Not even just the comfort level, the debt to income ratio level, they can afford to go higher as well. So that's going to help a seller be able to sell their house for a higher amount overall.
So you're telling me, Robert, that a seller can increase their purchase price, which makes sellers super excited, and a buyer is actually winning on their side as well because they're able to negotiate with their lender to buy down the rate. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yep, absolutely. And then they should also consult with their CPA to see if they could get a tax deduction on the discount fee for buying down the rate as well. So it's like a win-win-win for everybody.
That's amazing advice. Wow, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that. That's a great tidbit. And I think we're going to have to talk more about that on the next series that we have you on. But Robert, what is your contact information? And is there anything left that you want to tell the world about yourself, Guaranteed Rate, or anything else in regards to lending?
All right. Well, my contact information, we'll go ahead and put it up on the screen for everybody. But it's robert.imazumi, IMAZUMI, @rate.com. You can always reach me on my cell phone as well, 925-413-5955. And I think the biggest thing is just do your research, try to educate yourself as much as possible. You can't think about everything or can't believe everything you see on the internet. So talking to a good lender is going to help educate you to figure out what's going to be the best strategy for you. Save as much money as possible. Make sure you're paying off your debt as much as possible every month as well. And then don't necessarily rush into anything, but again, just talk to somebody and educate yourself and try to get into the market, just because every day that's going by, you're seeing houses appreciate more and more in the market. So I think that's something that I like to educate my clients on and figure out what the best scenarios for them are. Also, just come up with a budget every month if you can, so that way you could hit your financial goals sooner rather than later.
Yeah. And on that note, Robert, I know I've sent you clients and they're just not quite in the position to be able to buy right now, but even 6 or 12 months prior to them actually being able to have that down payment or have, what is needed for them to get pre-qualified, you're able to actually have those conversations to get them into a better position for when it is time for them to buy. So for anybody out there that is sitting there thinking, well, gosh, I'm just not ready to talk to a lender. Well, actually, maybe you are ready to talk to a lender, because 6 months, 12 months prior to actually having that down payment and being ready to buy is a perfect time to start those conversations to make sure that your credit score is where it needs to be. And there's other little tips that Robert might be able to share with you, or just look at your portfolio and shed some light as to getting you into the perfect position a little bit faster.
Absolutely. I mean, there's been several times that I've had clients for, more 1, 2, 3, 4 years that I've helping get this plan in place for them. And those are the best times, to actually see somebody work through it and then reach that goal finally.
Yeah.
So yeah, never too soon to talk.
That's awesome, Robert. Well, hey, thank you so much for all of the information. We look forward to having you back on the show. And if you guys have any real estate questions or needs, feel free to hit the like button below. Give us some comments, some feedback, leave us some questions, and we will make sure that we answer them on the next podcast. Have a great week, everybody. Thanks, Robert.
Thank you for having me.
Bye.
Bye.